Hello, my name is Evan. I am intending to play a whole bunch of different, black powder tabletop war games. I'm new to the hobby and I really want to get together a whole bunch of things relatively quickly and cheaply because as we've established before in other videos on my channel, I am a bit of a cheapskate. Looking around at the place, getting miniatures into Australia is a little bit pricey with shipping and stuff like that. It can take quite a while and hunting things down is quite difficult. So I thought, just for now, I would take a easy route and I'm going to make use of this. Risk! Specifically the 60th anniversary edition, apparently. Now, Risk obviously is the attention of a lot of ire regarding sort of tabletop war games. It's kind of in that same category as Monopoly. Incredibly famous, incredibly well known, and maybe for good reasons, maybe not, but regardless, a lot of people say that it's pretty overrated. Certainly, the idea that's been around for 60 years and gets a big fancy box like this, some people might see as being completely ridiculous. But I realise what this offers me is actually a relatively cheap and easy way to get a hold of a whole bunch of 12mm figures in order to play a whole bunch of different games. So that's my intention. I'm going to take all these little Risk miniatures and turn them into some battalions and brigades in order to play games like Black Powder or Sharps Practice, that kind of thing. So I'm going to open up this box, show you what they look like in this edition. I've actually got an older edition which I will keep a hold of for sentimental reasons. Maybe, maybe not. I might fix them up as well. But I'll show you what I'm going to do with these things just to sort of turn them into my little armies and sort of the philosophy behind what I'm doing with this Risk set. So yeah, I got this using a voucher. It is actually quite an expensive set, this one, but it was on sale, post-Christmas sales and all that. You can pick up Risk sets for like, I don't know, 60 Australian dollars, which is pretty cheap, certainly compared to equivalent numbers of soldiers in miniature form. But yes, let's open it up and let's have a look at them and I'll explain my general thoughts as to how I'm going to base these things up. Oh, it's a lovely box. It's a shame I'm doing nasty things to the figures. Well, I can even use this box for my miniatures later. Who knows? But this is 60th anniversary. Look at that. They got some nice little packs in order to keep mission cards in, which is pretty good. These are little armies, I guess, all packed away nicely. Oh my goodness, I feel bad for what I'm about to do to them. And some dice, which are always useful. So, let's have a look. So here they are. Here are the little figures, which I'm intending to sort of base up and turn into my little armies. As you can see, the little infantrymen are presenting to fire. Good for them. I do like the look of these guys standing up as opposed to the old Risk miniatures that were squatting down. But I don't like these ones as good as the tricorn Risk figures that I had already. That's the one I've actually got packed away, stored. Which may get it crack out eventually, but for now I'm going to use these ones. But yeah, sort of Napoleonic era looking dudes, maybe sort of the Crimean or whatever. The cannons, and our little soldiers here. Cavalry here. So yeah, typical Risk fare, infantry, artillery, cavalry. Perfect. And these are basically the basic building blocks that we'll use in order to build up our brigades. So what's my plan? My plan is simply this. I'm going to be sticking these fellas in groups of 6 to some little bases in order to use as the building blocks of sort of battalions and brigades. And I'll be sticking the cavalry maybe about 3 or 2 to a base in order for my little cavalry brigades. What I'm going to do though, as you can see, we've got like a whole bunch of red ones here, and obviously there's 6 other colors, typical Risk. But in order to make a full sort of couple of battalions worth, brigades worth, sorry, in order to play a game of something like Black Powder, which infamously requires many figures, I'm actually going to take all of the other colors of this set. As you can see, 6 colors for a typical Risk game. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to spray paint them only 2 colors, 2 teams, so that way I've got 2 armies to play with, okay? I'm going to spray paint them, I think red and white will be my initial coloring for these guys, and I may give them a black base coating. Now, obviously I was considering and contemplating taking these soldiers and maybe fully painting them up. You know, sort of 10mm figure painting is quite a popular thing to do, and in time I may do that, maybe. But I also kind of like the idea of the abstraction. I don't intend these armies to be any particular military force. I was tempted to do yellow and purple because I didn't know of any specific militaries that were yellow and purple from the Napoleonic era, to deliberately separate it out from the real historical events. So obviously a big part of the hobby for a lot of people is the historical nature of these miniatures, getting them accurate as possible. Most people just getting them tabletop ready, so that way when they set up their dioramas of historical battles, you look down from that bird's eye view and you're just blown away by how beautiful these sort of armies colliding into each other actually are. For other people, it goes right down to the button count, infamously, on infantry's soldiers' uniforms. But that's not what I'm going for in this case. What I'm going for is something that I can play games with, a whole bunch of different games. I want to play around with the game mechanics. And so for that reason, I actually don't necessarily need these things to look as historically accurate or even as beautiful as other people are so capable of doing. By all means, go find other channels that do that kind of stuff, because it is great to look at. No, I'm okay with the abstraction. These are just going to be two armies. There is abstraction in all wargaming. Obviously, actual soldiers aren't this size. These aren't battles for ants. And obviously in actual warfare, there's a lot more individual and personal stories, a lot of carnage that can go on the battlefield. But we abstract that out. We turn it into a set of rules, a roll of the dice, in order to have a fun game. So for me, I actually don't mind pushing that abstraction. I'm not going to go so far as just to have little like chess pieces moving around a battlefield. But the idea that these are playing pieces, not actual brigades and units in history, I'm okay with for my purpose. So that's what I intend to do. That's the philosophy behind what I'm doing. As I said, I'm going to be spray painting up all these things to have two armies worth of soldiers. I'm probably not going to spray paint all of the cannons because there's quite a lot compared to how many I'd actually need. Or maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But I'll also time lapse it to show you what I'm doing. Again, the idea that this is quick, easy, cheap, looks kind of good but not historically accurate, and is going to be useful for a whole bunch of different games that I intend to be playing. Alright, let's see how that goes. Right, there we have it. So this is all the little risk men painted up into 2 armed forces. And on the whole, I'm pretty happy with the result. As I said, I'm not going for realism or lifelikeness. As you can see, they are just one set matte color, white versus red. They're not meant to be any specific army. It's just 2 black powder forces for a game purpose. So with that in mind, it gave me a bit of leeway just to sort of keep everything really impressionistic, I guess you'd say. I put some paint around the edges of the bases in order to sort of keep things maybe sealed up a little bit, but also just to match that color scheme. The grass is just spray painted again. And just 2 layers of 2 coats of paint on these guys, based up on 6 a base. The idea being that I could do the full 24. It would just give me less battalions to work with. I think if I'm ever actually going to play with these guys without anyone else, I think I'm going to say that I'll just put them into battalions of 3 of these bases, like little battalions of 18 rather than 24, which would then mean, with support of cavalry and support of the artillery, it'd give me 3 brigades per side. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. It means that, again, it's just going to be good for the game. It'll make sense and it will work. Now, positives and negatives. Let's start with the negatives. So obviously, they are little risk soldiers, which have 2 major drawbacks. As you can see, they are all identical little soldiers. There is not variety, but that's okay. We've played to that by having it deliberately be sort of cartoonish, I guess you'd say. But also the other problem was that a lot of them, they've got lots of little seam lines all around the place. They're pretty cheaply made, and that's fine because that's good for the risk board. But if you wanted to ever actually full on paint these up as if they were, 12 mil soldiers, you're gonna have to deal with that problem where some of them got those big sort of round circle seam dot things on there somewhere. I don't know what they're from before, but you're really fighting against that. So yeah, they're very samey and they're not overly complicatedly made. But the positives, I managed to do 2 whole armies in less than a week, and I'm pretty happy with that for now. These will not be my pretty army. I am doing a project where I'm trying to put together a red coat and a convict force for stuff like sharps practice. And that will take me a lot longer. And I'm being more deliberate and historically minded with those ones. But for just games of things, just to try out games and not necessarily get into the history so much, these guys will do the job. And I managed to get 2 armies, like I said, in less than a week. Secondly, I actually kind of like the aesthetic. I kind of like the look of these guys. The fact that, yeah, it is kind of cartoonish, but still gives you the sort of standing army look. So I'm pretty happy with that. But yeah, so I hope this was, slightly informative and useful to someone. How to put together a sort of, 12 mil army on the cheap and on the quick, making use of your Risk board game, which maybe you haven't really gotten off the shelf in a while. So yeah, hope you enjoy this, and I hope you'll see me again another time. Fare thee well.